Welcome to PM Ready, your guide to becoming PMP certified. This is part 1 of the Scrum Rebooted lesson. Scrum needs a reboot. There are too many Scrum projects that are failing. In order to explain the reasons why so many Scrum projects are failing, I start with a quick review of the definition of Scrum and where it came from. Then I answer the question of what kinds of projects Scrum is for. Next, I review some of the common myths about Scrum. Many of you will be familiar with the mechanics of Scrum, and I introduce them in this lesson, but I also cover the reasons for these Scrum processes. Then we take a look at a specific case study in how to scale Scrum to several teams all working together on the same product. Finally, with all of this background in place, we can analyze why Scrum projects fail and what to do to reboot Scrum so that it lives up to its full potential. Scrum is a simple yet incredibly powerful set of principles and practices that helps teams deliver products in short cycles, enabling fast feedback, continual improvement, and rapid adaptation to change. Scrum was first created by Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber back in 1993. As you can see, this predates the Agile Manifesto, which was written in 2001, about 8 years later. Scrum, like the Agile Manifesto, was created as a response to the miserable failure of predictive approaches, which we now commonly refer to as the waterfall method. It started with the IT industry, where it seemed that no amount of careful, upfront planning and colorful Gantt charts could prevent software development projects from quickly falling behind schedule, going over budget, and failing to deliver what the customer needs. Scrum is based on the concept of an evolutionary, adaptive, and self-correcting system. It's based on years of research of how people actually work, rather than how we think they work. It's based on the idea of regularly checking with your stakeholders to see how well what you're building meets their needs, and making course corrections as needed along the way. Today, the Scrum torch is carried by the Scrum Alliance, which is the largest, most established, and influential professional membership and certification organization in the Agile community, with more than 750,000 certified professionals worldwide. In his book, Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time, Jeff Sutherland makes the case for using Scrum for just about any project. Most people think that Scrum works best for smaller projects, and that it doesn't scale well to large, multi-million-dollar projects. They would be surprised to learn that Scrum was used to rescue the project to create a new computer system for the FBI. The waterfall approach to writing the FBI system had failed twice. In those 2 failed attempts, they had spent over $575 million over a period of nearly 10 years on a system that was only half finished and never used. They had the best people working on it, but they were using the wrong approach. When they started over using Scrum, they were able to complete the system in less than 2 years, and for only $20 million. That's less than 5% of what had been wasted on the waterfall approach. Can you imagine a more impressive turnaround? You really should read the whole story in his book, which is full of engaging, practical examples of the successful use of Scrum. Another example is the case of a construction company that hired a software development company to write a computer system for them for $10 million over a year's time. They agreed to use a Scrum approach and finished it in just 3 months and for only $1.5 million. Jeff Sutherland even used Scrum to remodel his home. A neighbor was so impressed with the results that he hired the same people to do the same type of remodel job, but they didn't use Scrum this time, and it took much longer and cost more. He also provides examples of Scrum being used in government administrations to deliver meaningful value more quickly, as well as in educational institutions to help students learn more in self-organizing teams. However, my favorite characteristic of this book is that it's meant for a non-technical audience, and that it's designed to show how Scrum can be used for just about any type of project in any industry. Have you tried using Scrum and found that it just doesn't work well for you? Do you end up with projects that just run wild with no clear sense of direction and without providing real benefits? If so, you're not alone. This situation is all too common, and it's usually because of 2 things. First, the team follows some of the visible mechanisms and processes of Scrum, but without following the underlying principles. And second, the team follows only the Scrum processes and abandons all of the other best practices in project management that are still necessary and which complement the Scrum approach. Scrum is meant to replace some traditional project management practices, but not all of them. In the following slides, we'll go through not only the Scrum mechanisms themselves, but also the reasons behind them. Then we'll go through those best practices in project management that should be used along with Scrum. Let's start with some of the myths that people have about Scrum. First and foremost, there's the common misperception that Scrum doesn't follow a plan, that it has a process, but not a plan, and especially that the scope of the project is not defined. Remember the FBI project? It started with a well-defined scope. The requirements were known in detail. They started by going through all of the requirements documentation, reorganizing it, and estimating the effort of each requirement. That's right, they estimated it all up front. Does this violate the principles of Scrum? Not at all. Scrum embraces change, but it doesn't start off with no idea of where you're headed. You should have a good idea of what's needed and the path to getting there. The key with Scrum is that you'll be showing the stakeholders what you're building as you go, and making changes and course corrections along the way. Scrum, like the Agile Manifesto, values responding to change over following a plan. You still have a plan, but you recognize that the plan will need to change as you go. Next, you have the idea that there's no business analysis in Scrum. That the way you find out what the users need is to build a little something, show it to the users, get their feedback, and then make changes until you've built what they need. Well, that's all true, except that it's missing the first step, which is to apply some business analysis skills to find out what they want and why, so that you can be closer to the target when you build it the first time. And when you get feedback, that's another time that you should apply business analysis skills to understand what they need changed and why. Another myth is that Scrum uses no documentation. Working software is valued over documentation, but you do need to record your requirements and business analysis results in enough detail that you can implement these requirements properly. This is often recorded differently, in a prioritized list of user stories, rather than in a traditional requirements document. Another common practice is to use only Scrum processes. We'll get into this more later, but as an example, can you imagine abandoning all of your organization's quality control processes just because they aren't part of the Scrum processes? Quality metrics, processes, and quality measurements apply just as much in a Scrum approach as in a waterfall approach. How they are implemented may be adapted to the Scrum processes, but they shouldn't be forgotten. And how about the idea that you don't know how long it will take or how much it will cost, so that you can't have agreements or contracts that include costs or schedules? Well, you should have a plan and requirements and a schedule and definitely a budget. Using Scrum allows you to be more responsive to change and to get the most important things done first, so you can often finish ahead of schedule and under budget. Sometimes you see Scrum teams that never seem to finish because they change too much. Not all change is good. Sometimes it's a sign of a lack of defined scope, or a lack of understanding of the stakeholders' needs, which should have been discovered through business analysis. Sometimes it's because the team and stakeholders fail to keep their eye on the goal of the project, and think of it as a blank check to get whatever pet features they want, regardless of whether they're consistent with the overall project objectives. Often you find that people think that a Scrum team is unmanaged, that they should be left alone to do whatever they want, however they want. Self-organizing or self-managed teams are not unmanaged. They still need direction, guidance, facilitation, and coaching. They still need to have a team charter, and they should, as always, be heavily involved in creating their team charter. And they need to act in a manner that is consistent with their organization's values and culture. Finally, we have the common thinking that for software development projects, because change is inevitable, that code should be throwaway code. Code that is written quickly and without being constrained by any quality standards. In fact, the opposite is true. By following appropriate quality standards, your code will be more easily changed. You don't want to overdo it and over-engineer the code, but you don't want it to be low-quality code either, which is all the more reason to agree on what your quality standards are on a Scrum project, and to ensure that you have the quality that you need to be flexible enough to embrace change. These are the basic mechanics of Scrum. They start with the product backlog, which is your prioritized list of requirements. Some unique estimating techniques are used to estimate the level of effort needed to complete each of these requirements. A sprint is a fixed amount of time. It could be as little as a week or as much as a month, but it's often 2 weeks. Each sprint goes through the same cycle. It starts with a sprint planning meeting, in which the project team selects those items from the product backlog that they're going to complete in this sprint. These items are then put into a list called the sprint backlog. Each day starts with a daily scrum, in which the team quickly coordinates their efforts for the day. At the end of the sprint, you hold a sprint review meeting, which is a demo of what you've completed. Then you have a sprint retrospective, in which you assess the productivity of the sprint, and explore ways of improving the team's productivity. And last but not least, you have velocity, which is a way of measuring productivity based on the estimating techniques used earlier. Velocity is especially useful in measuring Scrum's promise of improving productivity from sprint to sprint during the course of the project. The product backlog is a list of requirements. More specifically, it's a rank-ordered list, usually of user stories. A user story is a way of formatting a requirement that we'll get to in the next slide. A rank-ordered list is a prioritized list in which each item is listed separately, with the highest priority item at the top and the lowest priority item at the bottom. No two items can have the same priority. Each item is lower priority than the item above it and higher priority than the item below it. Notice that this is different from other common approaches to prioritizing, such as the Moscow categories of must have, should have, could have, and won't have. You could also have these items assigned to priority categories, but when you put them in the product backlog, you must put them in order, one by one. The sprint backlog is much shorter, as it's only those items for the current sprint, but they should still be rank ordered. The sprint planning meeting is a meeting of all of the project team members. It's the meeting in which the team selects the items from the top of the product backlog that they'll complete in the current sprint. If an item is too large to complete in one sprint, then it should be split into subtasks that will fit into a sprint. These items should be taken from the top of the product backlog in rank order. You should not pull items from lower down on the list, unless there is some unavoidable technical reason to do so. And even then, you should take a closer look at how you could do them in rank order instead. Self-organizing basically means that each team member chooses what they will work on, or that the team as a whole determines who on the team is the best person to work on each item. Technically speaking, user stories are not specifically mentioned as part of Scrum. The work to be done in the product backlog could be formatted in some other way. However, user stories are a common way to represent requirements in the Agile community. They have the advantage of specifying not only what is wanted, but who wants it and why. Who is usually specified as a role, not as a specific person. Knowing the role of the user provides valuable context for the requirement that may affect how the requirement is implemented. The reason why the feature is wanted is especially valuable. Here's an example. Suppose the user story is, as an inspector, I need the comments that I add to a client's records to be unchangeable so that none of the users can accidentally change them. This could be implemented with some simple code that prevents users from editing comments after they've been saved. On the other hand, suppose the reason for the feature was different. Suppose it were so that I can prove in court that the comments haven't been changed. It requires a lot more work to protect records from being changed even by someone who breaks into the system's database to change the data. As you can see, knowing why the feature is needed can significantly affect how it must be implemented. It ensures that you provide the users with the solution that they need. Skillful use of business analysis is needed to get at the real underlying needs of the features that users request. What does it mean to be done with a task? Whether you call them tasks or user stories or work packages or something else, each thing that someone needs to do needs to have a clear definition of what it means to be done with it. You shouldn't assume that everyone has the same definition of done in their heads. The coders may call it done when they've finished coding it, before it's been tested. The QA team may call it done when they're finished testing it. Key stakeholders may not consider it done until it's been released so that they can use it. Each user story should include its definition of done, including requirements for functionality, quality, legal and regulatory compliance, performance, testing, and release. Remember your quality metrics and quality measurements? This is where they go. One of the significant contributions of Scrum is how it approaches estimating. We're notoriously bad at estimating. We tend to be too optimistic about how long it will take to complete tasks. This is especially true in projects with a lot of uncertainty and risk, such as in software development. Although we're pretty bad at estimating how long something will take, we're actually pretty good at estimating the relative sizes of tasks. We can tell whether this task is about the same amount of effort as that task, or that it's a little more effort, or a lot more effort, or a little less effort, or a lot less effort. We can take a list of tasks and label each as a small, medium, or large task, without knowing how long any of them will take. We can take this a step further and use the t-shirt sizes method and label each task as extra small, small, medium, large, or extra large. Or you could use the Fibonacci numbers. This is a number series in which each number is the sum of the two previous numbers. It starts with 1 and 2, which sum to 3. Then 2 plus 3 is 5, and 3 plus 5 is 8, and so on. Whatever method you use, each user story is assigned a size or number that represents its relative amount of effort, without worrying just yet about how long they'll take to complete. Next, we have the question of who assigns these numbers and how. The answer is that it's best if the entire project team is involved in determining these estimates. The whole team should estimate the entire product backlog. A popular technique is called planning poker, in which each person has a special deck of cards. Each card has a number on it that's based on the Fibonacci numbers, or it could be t-shirt sizes or whatever sizing values you're using. One at a time, you go through the list of user stories. You discuss the user story, including its requirements, its definition of done, and so on. People ask and answer questions, and the answers are added to the user story. Then, when everyone has a good understanding of the requirements, each person picks a card that they think is its relative size. Then you compare. If someone on the team thinks it's much larger or much smaller than the rest of the team, you discuss why. You may find that they have considered something that the rest of the team hadn't. Then you vote again with the cards until you're satisfied that you can pick a number or size and then move on to the next item. You do this for the whole product backlog. Then, at the beginning of each sprint, during sprint planning, as you're selecting items from the product backlog to place onto the sprint backlog, you should review these estimates and update them as needed, using the same process, having the whole team participate. In a nutshell, that is the Scrum estimating process. I'd like to add my own opinion here. I think this is a great process. but I don't like using the Fibonacci numbers. I find that they're too close to each other on the small end, and that there are simply too many choices. I prefer the 5 choices of the t-shirt sizes. And anything that's estimated as large or extra large needs to be divided into smaller tasks in order to be small enough to fit into a sprint. This is the end of Part 1. PM Ready is a publication of PM Guaranteed and is based on the Project Management Institute's PMBOK guide.